Okay. Good morning. Welcome to the Cloud Provider AWS meeting. Today is February 18th, 2022, and the meeting is being recorded. So please be respectful and adhere to the CNCF Community Code of Conduct. And we have the agenda. I have shared the screen here. If you have agenda items, please go ahead and add. And without further ado, we'll get started. So we'll start with a sub-project updates. The first one is CCM. So Nick.
Yeah, so we have an item here. I'm going to let Saurav drive the discussion. It's essentially about adding some support for a kind of generic tagging feature, but yeah, Saurav, if you want to go into that.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So basically, we are proposing that we add support for tagging AWS resources as part of the cloud provider. So there are a lot of customers today who are interested in making sure that all the resources related to a cluster are kind of tagged with a particular tag prefix and potentially which contains information about the cluster name. That kind of just helps them keep track of the resource usage as well as the cost associated with those resources. So EKS customers especially have been asking for this since a long time. I'm pretty sure other customers who run Kubernetes on AWS would benefit greatly from this as well. So this proposal is just like, and to give you some background, I think there are a number of ways we could do this, but each customer would basically then have to vend their own solution. So there are customers who use CloudFormation, Terraform, some use controllers to bring up these resources. So if like the proposal to add this to cloud provider is just to make a single unified solution for all of those customers. If not, like everyone would have to go and add like their own tags to each of these ways how they bring up these resources, so to speak. So that's kind of the proposal and some background behind that. So when is also from AWS is going to work on the implementation. Um, we had some ideas about potentially adding this as an optional controller in the cloud provider, just so that we make sure that customers who are not really interested in this can choose not to turn it on, and then if they are interested, they could turn it on. We wanted to obviously make this generic so that customers could pass in their own tags. And for EKS, it might be something related to AWS, but for other customers, they might just choose to tag all these resources to their own custom tags.
Yeah, and so have we thought about like what kind of, I don't know, like how they're going to configure this, how they're going to input the tags that they want to be applied?
Yeah, so we'd probably like get into more details once we like start implementing this. But at least like my idea of doing this was to potentially take these tags either from like a command line argument, because we would have to add a flag to enable or disable this controller anyway. We could, I don't know if there's support for config files, but we could potentially like read this from a config as well. But that's kind of how we are planning to make it configurable for our customers.
Yeah, I think the question would be either, some type of flag or config file that's passed in as an argument, or something more dynamic like config map or custom resource. I think that would be the decision.
Do we have to limit to EC2 instance node, or we can apply to all the resources managed by the controller?
Yeah, so that's a very good point. Go ahead, Nick.
No, go ahead.
No, I just want to clarify. Yes, I mean, the overall idea is to extend this to all of the resources, but like we are starting off by EC2 instances just so that we kind of build the framework and start off with something small, but at the same time, one that is most demanded by our customers today. But eventually, yes, we'll probably extend it to like more resources just so that like customers could have like a unified tag applied everywhere.
Okay, and this is only for AWS provider, right? It's not something that we want for or a framework for other cloud providers. How did we want to approach this?
Yeah, this is specific to AWS. So I mean, the integration here would be largely dependent on like the different AWS resources. So like we have different APIs for tagging EC2 related resources. We might have something else for other resources. So that's kind of why we are proposing to add this in the AWS cloud provider.
Okay, and these are in addition to the default tags we already have, right? This is like every customer would have a set of tags that they want to apply, and we honor their request here. I see.
Yeah, if I might, I think this is a great idea. I think we do have those tags, some tags already for resources that KCM does create. I understand these are like user tags. I think the one thing I'll put a comment on the issue. The one thing that I think we should be mindful of is the bring up. So in other words, how do we know that a node is allowed to join the cluster, right? And I don't know if EKS has a clever solution here, but in the past we've used things like verifying the tags. So it may be we don't want to like undo that good work or create a circular dependency where you can't actually join the cluster because the only secure way requires a tag. There are other things we can also check, like service accounts.
Good point.
But
yeah. I think what EKS has, we don't allow any node to just authenticate to a cluster. So we have a, we use the aws-iam-authenticator, which relies on the instance role and it relies on the user to actually add a mapping to the config map, but just making sure we don't break it for other use cases is obviously really important.
that's awesome. I do think the role is the primary mechanism, but I think that some people sometimes share roles. But yes, I mean, presumably, if we say role is the secure mechanism, that feels pretty good. And then anything else is advisory.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's a great point, and we'll keep it in mind as part of the implementation. One other thing that I also wanted to call out, which is kind of important, at least for ECAS customers, is that we want to use system tags. So obviously, the reason behind making these tags configurable and passed by the customers is we know that other customers who are kind of running Kubernetes on AWS might not have permissions to apply system tags. But since like EKS is like a AWS service itself, it does have permissions to apply those tags. So the way it kind of helps is it does not eat up into the tag limits per resource that is applicable to all the AWS resources today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Saurav. So let's move on. The next sub-project is kOps. Anybody
Thank you.
from kOps?
I guess that can be me unless John is here. I don't see John or anyone. I will give the update. So no significant updates, except thank you very much for releasing the LBC. That was one of our blockers for our next release. And so we are very appreciative of that. Thank you. John Myers does have an issue open, or a general challenge around IPv6 traffic routing, I think to load balancers, but honestly, I forget the details, which I think we've discussed in the past. And that is still open, but it's not a blocker for our release, but it is, I think, a blocker for pure IPv6 clusters.
So like what I've seen is like with Amazon VPC, IPv6 works, but the VPC CNI, but I feel that he's using a different CNI plugin in this case. And I believe that is the reason why IPv6 is not working. I haven't had a chance to reproduce this, but I will have some cycles to put in if I can get. I will reach out to John separately if I need further details. If I can reproduce here, we can troubleshoot further and see like what could be blocking here. Once we have the details, I will try to get something for the next meeting here.
That's actually really awesome. Like I think if we know that it works with the AWS, thank you for doing that. And I think if we know that it works with AWS VPC CNI, then we can do like a differential diagnosis and figure out what is the difference that is causing it to work in one scenario but not in another. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Like only the IP targets are supported right now for both ALB and NLB. Instance target aren't, but that works like verified multiple times. So the next one is load balancer controller. We released version 2.4.0. We finally support ingress v1 and the service load balancer class with this release. Thank you community for the contribution, especially John who contributed the ingress v1 support. And we had to fast track this release. Without this, we were not able to support Kubernetes 1.22 and later releases. Now we are finally able to support the recent Kubernetes releases as well. And the release notes are in the link for all the minor fixes that we have done with this release as well. The next is Karpenter.
Yeah, hi. I'm just covering up for the Karpenter folks. Nothing major, just that there were two minor releases on the Karpenter side, and starting 06.2, there has been a change in the upgrade process. So anybody who is trying to upgrade from earlier versions, just be mindful of following these steps to upgrade to 06.2 or the later versions. Yeah, that's all I had.
Wonderful. Thanks, Pratik. Are there any incompatibilities for the upgrade, or it should just work?
Mostly it should just work, but there is, I think, some cleanup that needs to be done. I'll have to follow up the upgrade more closely, like I haven't done it myself, but there is some cleanup that is required.
Cool, thanks. So let's move on. The next sub-project is aws-iam-authenticator.
Yeah, I can take that one. Just a quick announcement that the release 055 is out. It was a fast follow to 054. We decided to not publish binaries for 054 because we wanted to get some changes into the build. Previously, we were building a bunch of images with different base images, which is pretty much totally pointless. So we kind of minimize the build, just one minimal base, and it's multi-arch now as well.
Wonderful. Is there a release notes that we can also add here for reference?
Yes, let me link them.
Sure, thank you so much. So moving further, the next item is API security reviews. So Jay or Nick, if you guys want to talk about it, please go ahead.
Yeah, let Jay add, but the only thing is, I was just thinking we could have a section, or I don't know, a section of the meetings with PR reviews, kind of dedicated PR reviews. There's various pull requests that I've noticed recently. I mean, especially around AWS IAM-authenticator and then the pod identity webhook, where there's security related aspects or API changes, and I am proposing an internal meeting to kind of AWS, especially EKS, for this as well. But we could also have a mechanism in the community meeting. And then the final point that I was thinking is we could take advantage of some kind of a label for certain PRs that need some kind of API review, to kind of say, we should block this on, whatever the process is.
Yeah, just like a hold label for security review or something like that.
Sure. So the security review will be part of one of the sub projects here. Sure. Cool. So what else do we want to discuss today? Like, do we want to review this PR here as well? for today's meeting?
I'd like to, if we could. It's a fairly straightforward PR. It's been through a number of rounds of review between me and the contributor Logan Davies. I'm pretty happy with the approach taken, but it definitely will change the security sort of stance for IAM-authenticator, right? Because instead of specific string matching for user and role ARNs, instead it adds the ability to use the ARN-like matching. So you can put glob-like ARN-like things in there, which is frankly very useful for SSO integration, where SSO like auto generates role ARNs of a particular like pattern, and for those deployments using SSO, it could be a bit of a operations nightmare to have to like constantly patch the config map for the IAM-authenticator with those new auto-generated roles that refresh every so often. So the ARN-like matching, I think, is a good feature addition. I asked Logan to hide the feature behind an opt-in flag, feature gate, and he has done that in the latest revision to the pull request. Anyway, just wanted to get other people other than me feedback on this particular solution that's been proposed.
Looks like quite like a lot of changes here. I don't think we'll be able to I will be able to offer any feedback at the moment.
Sure,
if other
I
folks
understand.
have, please go ahead. But like at
One
the
thing
high
I was-
level, like just sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, please.
Just one thing I was curious about is just did it take into account the path issues that the authenticator has, because the STS response does not include the path in it, if I remember correctly. But if you have like a ARN-like wildcard support, I think the ARN would include the path. I'm just wondering if that was addressed or mentioned.
Could you give an example? I believe he's, so when you configure a pattern, an ARN-like pattern in the configuration file or the config map thing, it checks whether it's a user-specific ARN-like or a role-specific ARN-like. If that's what you're referring to, Nick, or are you referring to like
so there's this weird thing with AWS with IAM roles where the end of the role is like a path, basically. So when you create a role, it can have this slashed limited path at the end of it that might suggest like it's part of a organization, or you have /org/whatever. But that that was kind of like a later addition, so it's not actually part of the role name. It's a separate component, and it's not returned. I can't remember right now if it's not returned at all in the STS response, or it's not returned as part of the ARN or something. Anyway, the authenticator handles it a little bit weird, and I was just kind of wondering if that was addressed. I'll take a closer look and try to get an understanding of the PR. But yeah, just a thought.
No, I would appreciate it if you took a look at it and added your insight in that. I honestly wasn't aware of that particular complication. So yeah, I guess I'm more looking for just general feedback on two things. One, when we see features such as this that have a potential impact on this overall security stance of a project, should we sort of by default ask that feature be gated behind a feature flag? I think most people would agree that that's probably yes, that it should be an opt-in type thing as opposed to changing the default behavior of the configuration. And then the second point I'd like to get some feedback on is, do you actually agree that this does change the security stance of IAM-authenticator? I mean, it's still doing matching, right? It's just doing sort of one-to-n matching as opposed to one-to-one matching of ARN strings, right? And the fact that ARN-like is an actual condition matcher in IAM and CloudFormation's IAM support. I thought this was, I don't know, in line with AWS sort of IAM security practices and specifications. So anyway, just looking for general feedback on that.
My question is like around backward compatibility. Like, let's say that we have it behind a flag and allow the customers to opt in. What would happen to the existing configuration in place? Like, would it affect that, or
Nope. I specifically made sure that all the configuration was entirely backwards compatible. So it adds a new field called user ARN-like and role ARN-like in user mapping and role mapping, the configuration pieces for that. And they are mutually exclusive. So if you set user ARN, it overrides anything that you put in user ARN-like. Yeah, it's not changing the behavior of existing fields in the configuration. So.
On the sorry, on the feature flag point, I think it's a good idea to do a feature flag, but I would say we should just remember that like it's still gonna, people are still gonna turn it on, and we can't be like, oh yeah, we didn't really security review this, like haha, sorry, too bad. Like, so we still have to do that security review, like, and so
oh,
even
absolutely.
if something is feature flag,
I'm certainly
still...
not suggesting that we
right.
do a security review of it. So yeah, I just think just the default request from us should be, hey, anytime you're adding any one of these sort of features that may even remotely impact the security stance, it should be an opt-in feature.
I'd also mention it's a more mechanical point. It's a pretty small library that is vendored, and I don't know whether we've broached the topic of like, is it, you know, bring it in, like with whether
as yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd go either way. But,
so what's our mechanism for security reviews, like for the community here? I know we have an internal security review process with our components, but I'm not aware of like any community security reviews.
I don't think we have one, do we?
I put it in chat. There is SIG security now, which is, I think, more forward-looking than other security teams have been in the past, which are more about vulnerabilities. However, I suggest that the true experts on this feature are likely to be found within AWS. So unless you have people on SIG security, then like your people are going to spot it.
Yeah. I think Nick's proposing that we use a portion of this particular meeting for that security review when a security related item is added to the agenda.
Yeah, I was.
Nick, is that correct?
So I have, I guess my original thought was like, we have, we're gonna have an additional internal meeting that's kind of for security and API review of pull requests, but I'd also like to get community feedback on those things. So just to kind of, I don't know, something, it doesn't have to be like a super formal, but just bringing these kind of PRs to the attention of the community, I think would be a good thing to do. So if we have something that goes to the internal meeting, then we bring it to this meeting as well, or something like that.
Yep.
Thank you so much. I think that's all we have got for the agenda today. Unless we have anything else, I'm going to stop the recording here.